Hey guys, this is Fright Flamingo, and in this video we're going to be talking about Guild Wars 2 End of Dragons. So unless you've been living under a rock, you'll know that End of Dragons is Guild Wars 2's third expansion pack. It was revealed along with a short teaser trailer in August of this year. In this video, my aim is to catch you guys up with everything that's been announced so far, including when they're planning on releasing it, what maps they're going to be doing and stuff like that. But also what I want to do is have a bit of speculation on what they're going to be doing in terms of new races, new classes, new elite specs and stuff like that. So obviously it's based on some stuff that we do know and some stuff that we might want. And obviously I want you guys to get involved as well, so please comment below, you know, what you want to see, what you expect to see and stuff like that, so we can get the conversation going. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to play the short teaser trailer, so if you haven't seen it you can watch that now, but I'll also be putting timestamps below, so you can always just click to a particular question in the video if that's what you want to hear about.
This land, it's a monument to mortal resilience. They built new lives upon the very thing that sought to end theirs.
Portals are little flames, brilliant, hot, then gone. Those who face eternity easily forget what a lifetime means, what an ending means.
You know it doesn't have to be this way.
No, Cantha, it does. They need me.
Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is the burning question. When will End of Dragons be released? And it's a good question, and there may not be an exact answer right now, but I'm pretty sure by doing a bit of research I've managed to narrow it down to quite a small margin. So I've basically run the numbers so you don't have to. So first of all, they've obviously announced that this will be released in 2021. So that's your first time frame. So that means that it's definitely going to be released anywhere between January and December 2021. And then they've also announced the release schedule for the Icebrood Saga Champions, which is the current Living World story going on at the moment. So they've got the last chapter of that, Chapter 4 Judgment, coming out in May 2021. So obviously you can say with complete certainty that the expansion won't be coming out before the finale of the Icebrood Saga. So if that's in May 2021, you can say with certainty that it won't be coming out before then. So then you have to look at how long do they normally leave it between the end of one story and the start of another. And I've had a look, and the shortest time seems to be about 2 months. So I think you can easily say it's going to be a minimum of 2 months after the end of the Icebrood Saga Champions. So that brings you to July 2021. So that is the earliest possible date that I can see this being released. They also wouldn't want to wait too long, so I can't see November, December when you're talking a big 6-month gap there. So I think your sweet spot is probably going to be somewhere between August to October. The other 2 expansions were released in September and October as well, so I think that's the sort of time of year they're looking for. So I think that quarter there between August and October is definitely when you're going to see the game released. So pen that in your diary now. Alright, so the next thing I want to talk about is something that a lot of people are asking, and that's, is there going to be a new class in End of Dragons? And although there's been no official announcement on this, I'm afraid I'm going to break a few little hearts when I say I honestly do not see this happening. I think that's the general consensus as well. Most people are saying that they're going to be focusing on the elite specs, which we'll go into in a minute. I think obviously with the first expansion, Heart of Thorns, there was a new class, so people probably thought then that there would be a new class with each individual expansion like other games have done. But to be honest, I think that was always going to be the case, because obviously they started with 2 soldier professions, 3 adventurer professions and 3 scholar professions, so it sort of evened that out. So basically getting another heavy armor class in there with the Revenant released in the Heart of Thorns, and then obviously Path of Fire came around, and there was no new class, and obviously some people were disappointed at that. But I think we're going to continue with that because I think they've hit their stride with the elite specs. People are quite excited about that. So although, like I say, no announcement on this yet, but do not be surprised if there is no new class. I mean, there are a few different options that they could go with. Obviously, as it's in Cantha, there is, you know, the factions classes, the assassin from Guild Wars 1, but to be honest, the thief's already quite close to that, and you might see an elite spec looking a bit like that. And also, Guild Wars 1 factions had the ritualist as a new class as well, which is something a little bit different, using to summon spirits and stuff. So that could be the only thing that you could potentially see if they were to bring out a new class. But yeah, like I say, I would be very surprised, so don't hold your breath on that one, guys. Alright, so next up I want to give some good news, which is about Elite Specializations. So obviously in Heart of Thorns and Path of Fire, each of those released a new Elite Specialization for every class. So 9 Elite Specializations in Heart of Thorns and 9 with Path of Fire. So we can definitely expect to see another 9 Elite Specializations in End of Dragons, as this was actually announced by one of the ArenaNet team on a Twitch stream. I'm not sure entirely intentionally, but you know, he mentioned that they're working on the Elite specs and gave that away, and I think that's been corroborated since then. But to be honest, I mean, I think this was nailed on anyway. They were always going to do this. This has replaced the sort of bringing out a new class, because you can, you know, you don't have to bring out a new class, but if for some, you know, it's almost like getting 9 new classes, especially if they're good elite specs. So hopefully we'll be seeing some decent ones which really do change the base mechanics for the professions, which is awesome, because then, like I say, it feels like you get a whole new class anyway, like a few of the ones that we've got now, like the Holosmith completely changing the engineer, and you know, a couple of the others that you'll see with like the Soul Beast, which makes some big changes to the Ranger, and lots of really good ones that we've already got. But you know, everyone's going to be really excited about 9 new Elite Specializations, and I'd really like to hear what you guys, you know, think about this, like in terms of speculation, because obviously this is something we know we're going to see. So we're going to see, you know, what sort of thing are they going to do. Obviously, with the expansion being set in Cantha, are we going to have like some Cantha inspired ones as well, because we've seen that with Path of Fire, some of them sort of inspired by Alona and you know the sort of Guild Wars Nightfall, if you like, things from the original game. And here obviously we've got the Guild Wars factions link in Cantha, so we could see a couple of like inspired by the Assassin and the Ritualist, which were the 2 unique professions in Guild Wars factions. So you could see that. You know, you could have an Assassin elite spec for the Thief, which to be honest might be a bit similar to some of the ones they've already had, but you know, you could be something like that. I mean, they can't keep making completely unique elite specs forever, so that's going to be quite cool. So I'd like to hear what you guys have to think about that. I think we could see some really cool ones, so that's something that we should really look out for. Alright, so quite a lot of people asked the question as well, is there going to be a new playable race in End of Dragons? And you know, it's a good question. People do often ask that with each expansion, but to be honest, I think it's very unlikely. There hasn't been a new race since the game came out. Started with the 5 races. There wasn't any new ones in Heart of Thorns or Path of Fire, so I'm expecting it to carry on along those lines with End of Dragons, to be honest. So I just want, you know, I'm not going to go too much into this, but you know, to be honest, that's what we would generally expect to see. I don't think there's not much of a call for it either, because races don't make a massive difference in Guild Wars 2. It's more of a aesthetic thing more than it is actually being more powerful or anything like that. So yeah, I think we're going to see the 5 base races remain and not see any additional ones, especially because I don't think there's any massive contenders for a new race, to be honest. The ones that you can think of, you know, there's some that you interact with in the game, but I don't think there's any that really need to be added. I think we're all pretty happy with that, so I don't think that's something that people are going to be too disheartened about, and I think it's pretty expected that there won't be a new race in End of Dragons. So another thing that people ask a lot about is where End of Dragons is going to be set, what the explorable zones are going to be, because we've become accustomed to this with the last couple of expansions. There will be a new area, and there'll be quite a few new explorable zones within that, so we're definitely expecting that to continue with End of Dragons. And this is something that one of the only things that ArenaNet have actually given a decent amount of information on. So if people who don't really know that much about Guild Wars 1, they might not have guessed from the trailer, but anyone that does knew as soon as they watched the teaser trailer that's going to be set in Cantha, which is the where Guild Wars Factions from the original game was set. And to be honest, they've announced that since they've confirmed that it will be set in Cantha, which is another area. So obviously the main area is, you've got Central Tyria, and then Nightfall in the original game was set in Alona, and that's where Path of Fire was, and now they're moving on to Cantha, so I think it's just sort of a natural progression. So I'm pretty excited about this. They've also gone into a little bit more detail, and they have announced 2 of the explorable zones that you'll be getting with this expansion, and that is Xingzhe Island and Echovold Forest, which are 2 zones that were also seen in the original Guild Wars Factions as well. So it's pretty exciting if you're someone like myself who grew up playing that game, and you've got fond memories of it. We'll be able to go back to the areas that we knew, albeit a couple of hundred years later, so I can't expect things to be exactly the same. But the Echovold Forest in particular is going to be quite different, because in the original game that was sort of devastated by everything that was going on at the time with the Jade Wind and everything. I'm not going to go into too much detail and bore you with that, but it's been said that now the forest has actually regrown since then, so it's going to be a lot thicker, and it's going to be a nice quite a healthy forest, so that's going to be quite nice to explore. I think that's going to be quite a nice looking zone. It's got a really nice art style, really, with Cantha. It's sort of an Asian inspired, all of the architecture and stuff like that, so you'll see that with the buildings, with the classic Asian architecture and everything like that, which is really cool. So I think you really like this, and this is obviously something we've got a decent amount of information on, so it's a bit of good news that we can speak about there. So obviously there are quite a few more zones in Cantha and Guild Wars 1, so we could see those cropping up. I mean, I think you're probably going to see maybe another 4 or 5 explorable zones at release, maybe something like that. So we know 2 of them, so there's going to be a couple more, and obviously we can speculate on what they are. Obviously I'd like to hear what you guys think, especially you guys who've played Guild Wars Factions. What areas in that would you like to see replicated in End of Dragons? It'll be interesting to see what you guys think of that, but I'm pretty excited about this, going back to Cantha and seeing what's happened to it since the events of Guild Wars Factions. Well, new mounts is also something that you hear people mention quite a lot. It's something that's a definite possibility. I mean, it's probably a probability, at least a couple of them. Obviously they first released mounts in Path of Fire in the last expansion, and there was a certain amount of base ones, and they've released some more throughout the living stories as well, so they have built on that. I mean, I don't think they want to go too mad and end up with a ridiculous amount of mounts to choose from, because the way they do it with the mounts, each of them has their own unique abilities, so I think that would get a bit, you'd start running out of ideas, and they'd be doing ridiculous things to actually justify having a new mount. But I think what you're probably going to be seeing with new mounts in End of Dragons is, because a lot of the speculation is that it might be a bit more water based, and I'll go into that a little bit more in the overall speculation on the trailer and everything later in the video, but yeah, if we're going to see a more water based expansion, then I think we could see maybe some more water mounts. I know obviously we've already got the skimmer, and there is like the new skimmer mastery where you can go underwater with it and stuff, so that does take quite a lot of that. But I think maybe you could see a couple of different water mounts doing different things, one that can like shoot forward really fast, or one that can go up and down and do a couple of different things like that. If they really build on that water thing, then you could potentially see that having a big impact on the mounts. So I think that's probably what you're like. You can't see too many more land mounts or flying mounts to see what they're going to do, but I think that's probably the direction they're going to be going in. Alright, so some of you are probably thinking, what does End of Dragons actually mean? I mean, obviously most of Guild Wars 2 has been based around the Elder Dragons. So when they say the End of Dragons, does that mean that all the dragons will be dead and, it'll be the end of Guild Wars 2? Well, I can obviously dispel that rumour because Arena have come out and said that this will not be the end of Guild Wars 2. So the story will continue after this. Whether that means more expansions in the future or whether the Living World story will continue, that's not yet clear, but they have said this is not the end, so maybe it's not as literal as they actually, as people may make it out to be, End of Dragons. I mean, I think it's difficult. I think it's alluding towards something in the story. It could be that in this expansion, rather than actually fighting the dragons, it might be something else that's threatening the existence of the dragons. And obviously, as we've discovered in previous Living World and expansions, the lives of the dragons are actually quite important to Tyria. They're not just a threat that needs to be destroyed. So we have seen that. So it could be about a threat to bring about the end of dragons, and we've actually got to fight that. Well, it does tie in with the trailer as well, and I will speak a bit more about the trailer in a minute and doing a bit of analysis on that. But basically, you've got Cunavang, who's a lesser dragon in the trailer, who assumably is going to be a antagonist in the story as he was in Guild Wars Factions. And then you've got the voice of another dragon in the trailer as well. So I'll go into that in a little bit, but that could be the voice of the deep sea dragon or something like that, and it could be a relatively friendly dragon that we might actually help rather than try and attack. So that does make you think, what is going to be the antagonist then, if not a dragon? But I think it would be a little bit interesting for it not to be a dragon, a bit like in Path of Fire. Balthazar was the main antagonist in that. So I think that did make it a little bit more interesting because, we have had a lot of dragon, with the main personal story, with Heart of Thorns, with the other Living World series as well, where we've done that, and then obviously with the Ice Brood saga as well, fighting Jormag. It can get a little bit old, so it would be nice to see something different. But yeah, just to confirm, it's not the end of Guild Wars 2 as they've confirmed. I think it's just a name. I think maybe we're reading too much into it. It's just going to be part of the story, and the game could continue without maybe the dragons being the overarching thing. Like I said, Path of Fire, a lot of that wasn't about the dragons. It was about the gods and stuff like that, so we could be looking into more stuff like that. But yeah, I just thought I'd dispel any rumour of potentially it being the end of Guild Wars 2, which they've said it definitely isn't. But yeah, it will be interesting to see what that actually means and how that plays out when we get into the story of the new expansion. Okay, so now I wanted to give some general analysis of the trailer. I'm not going to go into a ridiculous amount of detail and analyse every single frame, but I just want to give you my general thoughts on it. So obviously you start the trailer by flying through Cantha, which obviously they've confirmed. You see some of the traditional Canthan or Asian architecture, just to sort of let you know that it exists. It's just sort of like a tip of the hat. Yeah, it's definitely Cantha, just to let you know. And obviously from that you hear the voice of somebody who you'll find out a little bit later in the trailer. It's actually Cunavang, who's a lesser dragon from the original Guild Wars Factions game. So Cunavang is generally a good dragon and is on your side, so you'd expect them to be a protagonist in this story. Then there's a second voice, and there's a lot of speculation on this. Who's the second voice that's talking to Cunavang? A lot of people say, and I agree with this, I think it is the deep sea dragon, the elder dragon that we haven't yet found anything out about and we don't even know the name of. So there's a couple of reasons why. So obviously, we've dealt with most of the elder dragons by now. So obviously we dealt with Zaitan in the main personal story. Modromoth we dealt with during Heart of Thorns. Then there was Kralkatorrik, which we dealt with in season 4, I believe, of the Living World. And then also, obviously we're fighting Jormag at the moment with the Icebrood saga, but people generally seem to think that will end by us defeating Jormag. So assuming that, the only Elder Dragons remaining, at least ones that are known to us anyway, are Primordus, who is the Dragon of Fire, which, to be honest, does not fit at all into where we're going with this one, so that doesn't seem very likely. And then there's the Deep Sea Dragon, which has only been mentioned briefly, and isn't really something that we know too much about. There's a couple more hints towards this as well. There is the logo at the end of the trailer, which is quite interesting, because each of the expansions has got its own logo, so people were quite excited to see that for End of Dragons. And obviously it gives a little bit of a hint about the game as well, the expansion that is. And obviously it's a water logo, so you can see the dragon's head is sort of like a wave. So that's obviously a big indicator that we're talking about a water dragon. So the only dragon that really fits that mold that we know of is the Deep Sea Elder Dragon. So that's what people are thinking, and people obviously, going back to the second voice, people are thinking that is Cunavang talking to the Deep Sea Elder Dragon. Cunavang, for all we know, we don't know too much about Cunavang, could be a disciple of the Water Elder Dragon, the Deep Sea Dragon. So to be honest, them speaking would be a very a feasible thing, and you couldn't really imagine Cunavang speaking to anyone else other than another dragon in this situation, that it would be significant enough. So I think that is, do you know what I mean? You can't be certain of anything like this, but I think that is the most likely thing, and it's definitely not someone we already know, because they have announced, somebody, one of the ArenaNet team did put on Twitter that they're excited to introduce this new character to us. So the other voice is definitely not. Some people are like, maybe it's Aureen talking to them or something like that. It's definitely not, because it's 100% been confirmed as a new character. So my opinion, and a lot of people do think it's the Deep Sea Elder Dragon. So that's just my opinion. I'd like to know what you guys think as well, so do comment below what your thoughts are. But also there's the at the end of the trailer, when the logo comes up, there is wave sounds as well. So definitely water related, and lots of people are saying that it could be quite a water centric expansion, which, to be honest, in some ways could be my worst nightmare, as I'm not a massive fan of the underwater combat. I just like to be on land and stuff like that. So I do worry about that a little bit, but we've got to get on with it, and it could be something that they could do quite well, with lots of cool new mounts and stuff like that, and new places to explore using the Z axis as well, so you can explore quite a lot underwater. So that's quite a cool idea, and that pretty much covers most of the basics of the trailer. Obviously there's other stuff you can read into, little bits you can pick up on, but the main things are the two voices. Who is the other voice speaking to Cunavang? So that's the main thing. And then also it's about the setting, which we know has been confirmed as Cantha as well. So there isn't too much more to read into it, unless obviously you sit there and you speculate on every little thing. And obviously there's little Easter eggs in there, they've confirmed that. So it's worth watching the trailer a couple of times to see little things that you might pick up on. Maybe some things harking back to Guild Wars factions that might remind you of that and stuff like that. But yeah, no, it's quite interesting to see, and it's interesting to hear a lot of people's analysis, how much they read into it. And then just finally, there is also a tagline as well under the logo at the end, and that is "The cycle is reborn." I mean, obviously it's unclear exactly what this means. Is it to do with a cycle of the dragons? Do you know what I mean? Obviously it's the end of dragons, so is it the end and then there's a new beginning of more dragons, or something else to replace the dragons? So is this a cycle that's been going on for a long time? It's just, the last time it came around, it was so long ago that nobody remembers, and the history books don't speak of it anymore. So is it something like that? I mean, obviously they speak about in the trailer the dragons, assuming they're both dragons, talking to each other about how mortal lives are fleeting and all of this. And and they talk about living for eternity and stuff like that. But maybe, they're speaking about mortality. Maybe this is the dragon sort of coming towards they're facing their own mortality, assuming that they are maybe mortal after all. And then, this other person or dragon saying, they need me. Is it saying that, the mortals need me, as we know that they rely upon it, and all the elder dragons dying, as could cause a massive effect and end the race's interior as we know them. So could it be that them dying is the end of the cycle, and all of the mortal beings would die, and then maybe something new would start? And maybe the dragon doesn't want that. Maybe they want to fight the end of dragons. Maybe they want to keep that going to help them, the mortals survive, and to keep the legacy going. Maybe doing something with Cunavang similar to what they did with Aurene, taking over the role of the Elder Dragon. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't think Cunavang is necessarily as powerful then like that as Aurene, but it's a potential thing. And at the end of the day, this is all speculation. It could all be completely wrong, or it could be spot on, which is probably unlikely. So I'd like to hear your speculation on the trailer as well in the comments. So it'd be interesting to see what you guys read into it as well. So do let me know. Okay, so the last thing I want to speak about is something that's got a lot of people talking, and that is the potential of Guild Wars 3. This is not something that has been announced or even mentioned by any official sources, so this is pure speculation. But obviously, when you get to a certain stage, Guild Wars 2 has been out for over 8 years now, and it sounds crazy to say that, but it actually is. It came out in 2012. So after 8 years, you would expect that potentially, you would be talking like this. I think it was about 6 or 7 years that the first Guild Wars was out before they brought out the second one. So you would have thought, now, are they thinking about it? I'm not sure. I mean, I don't think it's something that is being worked on or actively is in. There's a timeline for it at the moment. I don't think that's the case. I think Guild Wars 2 is still modern enough, and it's kept itself up to date that it can compete with other games at the moment. I don't think it's fallen behind. I mean, you've got games like World of Warcraft that are still going, that came out at a similar time to the original Guild Wars, and we're already 8 years into Guild Wars 2. So I think it can keep going for quite a while longer. And I mean, the speculation around the end of Dragons being the end of Guild Wars 2, they have confirmed that isn't the case. They haven't given any details on that, so are they saying that there will be more expansions or just living worlds? So you can read into that as you see fit, but there's definitely no mention yet of a Guild Wars 3. I think at this stage it's probably something that has maybe been whispered about in corridors at ArenaNet potentially. They know that eventually it might happen, and I'd love to see it eventually, but I think at the moment, I think people want Guild Wars 2 to continue growing and to continue playing that. I don't think that they could justify a whole new game that it would be as different. I think when it got to Guild Wars 1, they had lots of plans in place to continue that. Guild Wars Beyond, they had lots of expansions and plans that they could do, and then I think eventually they sat down and they thought about it, and they came to the conclusion that they couldn't do everything they wanted to do in Guild Wars, within the engine, within the restrictions in Guild Wars 1. That they thought, they could build a whole new game with the content that they wanted to add, and that's what they ended up doing. And I think it worked out brilliantly. But I think that was a bigger jump. I think from Guild Wars 1 to Guild Wars 2, that jump in the quality and those years, between then and how gaming developed, was more so than the 8 years between when Guild Wars 2 came out and now. I think they can look at what they want to do, what sort of game they want to make, and they can pretty much fit that into the current Guild Wars 2 game that they've got. There might be a couple of things they're thinking, I wish we could do that, and we could do that if we did have Guild Wars 3. But I don't think yet there is enough changes and new stuff that they could do to really justify it. To be perfectly honest, continue growing the story of Guild Wars 2 seems like the logical option. So, unfortunately, I don't see Guild Wars 3 happening anytime soon. I mean, we might be talking. I mean, obviously, by the time they announce it, it's going to take years to develop. So, it could be 2025 before we see maybe a potential Guild Wars 3. I mean, I think it will happen eventually. I hope so. What I don't want is for Guild Wars 2 to sort of slowly die off and for nothing to replace it. I mean, that would be, terrible. I mean, I've been playing Guild Wars from the first game for years. It's been a big part of my life, so I wouldn't want it to end. But yeah, I think for the time being, You know, obviously people are talking about it, but I don't think most of the people who play Guild Wars 2, I don't think it's actually what they're hoping for right now. They just want a really good expansion in End of Dragons. They want to, you know, new stuff. They want new elite specs. They want new areas to explore and stuff like that. I think that's the main focus at the moment. Everyone's just hoping for a really good expansion. Fingers crossed, hopefully not too much underwater combat. You know, I think that's what people are aiming towards right now. But you know, the thought in the head, they're probably thinking Guild Wars 3. You know, they might be gearing towards it eventually. But I think we'll see at least another expansion after this, a 4th expansion, and maybe even a 5th expansion before we get to even starting on Guild Wars 3. So sorry to disappoint you if that's something you're really looking forward to. Like I say, this is all speculation, but I mean, the idea of Guild Wars 3 is speculation anyway. It's nothing that's been announced or anything like that. So I think that pretty much covers everything I wanted to speak about the expansion. Obviously in the coming months there's going to be more and more stuff announced, so you know, I might do an update video if enough stuff comes out. But I just wanted to give you just an overview of, you know, the stuff we do know, as well as, you know, stuff that you know, we're potentially looking forward to, with, you know, with my opinion on the analysis of it. But you know, the main thing I want is for you guys to let me know what you are looking forward to, what you want to see, what you expect to see, because I think that's the interesting thing. Is because at the moment it's all speculation, so everyone's got their own opinion. Obviously you know, I've got my opinions based on what I know and what I've seen, but you know, you might think something totally different, and it's just as legitimate at this stage. So I'll be interested to hear what you guys have got to say. So please do comment below, you know, what you're thinking, you know, what you're hoping for elite specs. Do you want a new class? Do you want new mounts? It'd be really interesting to see. So thanks for watching, guys. Do check out my channel and like and subscribe if you like this video, to be kept up to date with everything else I'm doing, like class guides and beginner guides and stuff like that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.